Who are you and what is it you do?
My name is James Endeacott and I run 1965 Records, which is a label I started about 10 years ago, maybe, 2006. I had a deal with Columbia, Sony Records, and for about 3 years. And signed a band called The View that had a big #1 album in the UK and a few other bands as well. And then that all sort of fell apart and went to sleep. And then I've resurrected it again with PIAS. Met Jason Rackham at a party and we concocted this deal together. He's very kindly, let's put records out, which is fantastic. So I'm back. 1965 is reborn, the rebirth.
Could you tell us a couple of bits about your career leading up to working with Sony and then afterwards?
Yeah. Well, I moved to London in like the mid-80s as a sort of 21-year-old. I actually moved to London to be a comedian. I moved here to be a stand-up comedian, but ended up joining a band. I was in a band called Loop in the 80s. We were signed to a label called Head Records, which was run by Jeff Barrett, who now runs Heavenly Records. And then I did that, and I worked at Rough Trade Records in the early 90s for a little bit. Then I managed a band in the 90s called Tindersticks, who were quite big around Europe. A lot of people I've met today from PIAS were around at that time as well. So I did that for about 5 years. And then I stopped managing the Tindersticks in the late 1990s, and I went back to Rough Trade Records and worked with Jeff Travis then and Jeanette for about 10 years. And that was a really great time for Rough Trade. Signed the Strokes, I A&R the first 2 Strokes albums. I signed the Libertines as well, who were obviously quite successful in their own little mad way.
Never heard of them.
Never heard of them, I know, yeah. So we did that, so that was really great. I did all that, and then so I was sort of riding the crest of the wave a little bit. I thought I could walk on air. I was the Don. And then I got the phone call from Sony to go and do 1965. So I did 1965 a bit, as I said earlier, and that was all great. Really successful with The View, #1 record. And then in the last couple of years, I've been doing a bit of management, but then just really missed putting records out. There's all these bands around, and just records coming out that I wish I was putting out. I just thought, why don't I just start the label again? And also, a lot of bands are reforming now, so I thought, why not a label reforming? It seemed sensible. So I'm back. So yeah, let's say I did the deal with Jason, and it's good to be part of the PIAS family. There's a lot of them, but yeah, it's good.
You mentioned 2 bands. Let's give them a plug. So what have you got coming up this year to look out for?
Well, a band called Lusts, Lusts. They're a band from Leicester. They're a duo. Just got their first single coming out soon. It's been mixed by MJ from Hookworms, who's a big fan of theirs. They've only done 2 gigs so far. Amazing band, very sort of early 80s sounding, a bit sort of zoo records, so a bit early sort of Teardrops, Bunnymen, High School Works, that sort of vibe. But really pounding and just really just great, a bit really hooky songs. They've got great crossover potential. And they're lovely lads, and they've been around, they've been kicking around for a while in various little bands in Leicester, but never done anything, so really excited about them. And there's another band called Man and the Echo, which are named after a W.B. Yeats poem, and they're from Warrington, up in the northwest, and they are, how would you describe them? It's quite difficult. They love Northern Soul. There's a real Northern Soul element to what they do. And they're great harmonies. And there's a kid called Chris who plays on the keyboards, who's just one of the most amazing keyboards players I've ever. He's actually, by day, he's a train driver. That's what he does. He's mental. He's a train driver, but he plays the keyboards. Anyway, they're really good. So they're in Paul Weller's studio right at the moment, recording their first EP. They're actually there today as we speak. So by the time people watch this, they may even have heard it. So that's really exciting. Again, it's new. A few people here have heard a couple of demos and really like them, so I'm really excited about them. And they're a great live band as well, really great live band. So they're the first 2. There's a couple of other things in the offing as well, that are bubbling away, which I can't say anything about. I don't want to ruin it, but you never know. But yeah, it feels like 2015 is going to be, well, 1965 is 50 in 2015, so it's about time I put a record out, isn't it? 50 years.
It might be too early to say in the reborn 1965, but what defines the label? What makes it different to anyone else?
I think what I always say, people ask me what I look for in a band, and I look for a beating heart, I look for a great melody, and I look for good shoes. They're the 3 things that I look for. I think what you're going to get eclecticism, you're going to get a real array of different sounds. We're not very genre specific at all. I think, but what you are going to get, you're going to get a lot of passion, a lot of belief, and you're going to get me shouting from the rooftops a lot about it and banging on people's heads, saying, listen to this, you know, I'm very passionate, I shout a lot. But I think all the bands, and it's one big happy family, and anybody's involved, anybody can be involved. I just feel as though, is it any different to any other label? Yeah, it is, of course it is, because it's me involved, and it's 1965, and it's great, and any band that it's worth its salt would want to be on 1965, even though all the other labels are great as well, obviously, you know, it'll be fun. And I just think, I don't know, I just get excited by it. And I think if I get excited, then other people are going to get excited as well. And I think that's the bottom line, really, isn't it? It's quite simple.
Not to have a pop at any specific area, but obviously you had experience of being tied up in a major label system.
Yeah.
Are you glad to be out of that now? What restrictions did it place on you?
I am glad to be out of it, but I'm also glad that I did it as well.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really glad that I did it. I learned a lot. A lot of misconceptions are blown out of the water. I always felt that people at major labels didn't really get music, which is not true at all.
Yeah.
Some of the best people I've ever worked with worked at major labels. It's just that it's very bureaucratic. I guess all companies are slightly bureaucratic and jump through hoops, but I think it just took a long time to get anything done, and it just seemed to take forever. Everything should be planned so far in advance, and what I like being reactive to things. I like being able to just go.
Yeah.
I like being able to just do it when I want to. If I want to go somewhere today, I can. I want it now. I want to do it. I don't need to have to ask so-and-so and get it signed off by that person, signed off by him in New York, and signed off by him in Ipswich or wherever the hell it is, you know? It's just, it was good, and I think all those experiences I learned through the major system were going to help me in the, obviously I spent a lot of years in the independent sector as well, with rough trade and stuff, which has also got its flaws, you know, it's not as perfect as people think it is. But I think you can take the good and the bad from both. But I think me personally, having the experience of both the major label world and the independent world, I could put those together and hopefully try and make 65 a success again. Many fingers crossed, obviously.
Last question, are you optimistic about the future of the record industry, or at least independent's place within it?
I am optimistic purely because there's so much great music out there. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of ways you can consume music now. You know, that's a whole other debate. There's a lot of ways to find music, and we can listen to it all day long on our phones, on our whatever, you know. But I'm very optimistic purely because there's so much great music out there. A lot of it gets lost, which is hopefully where great labels like 65, Heavenly, Washington, we all can find these little bands that otherwise would get lost. I think it's a really great time, and I like the way that here at PIAS, it's a big, even though we're all different labels, we're all in it together, and we're all helping each other out. We're all sort of propping each other up at the bar or wherever, or just when one of us falls over, literally, we'll help them up, you know. And I just think it's a really great time. I'm very positive. I'm always positive about music. I'm very much a glass half full guy than a half empty. And I just think, if I'm not positive about it, then there's no point doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if my heart's not in it, my heart and soul isn't in it, then I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic. I'm always optimistic. I'll be optimistic when it's the apocalypse that I'm in. Don't worry about that.